Texas A&M 38, LSU 23. What's up, guys? Carter Karels here with Gig'em 247 at Kyle Field for your post-game analysis of a game that, frankly, I'm still trying to process. A wild turn of events, a crazy flip of a game. This A&M team looked dead. They looked done. They looked defeated. I mean, however you want to describe it. And then Marcel Reed happened, and then BJ Mays happened, and one of the more crazy turnarounds you'll see in college football happened in a game that had all the stakes in it. A game not just in the SEC standings, but in the college football playoff picture. And gosh, you really got to start with Marcel Reed, because up until he came in, this offense for A&M was really struggling under Connor Wigman. Connor Wigman, we've said this for, throughout the season since that Notre Dame game. He kind of is who he is. He's somebody that his highs are very high, his lows are very low, and today it was the second one where it wasn't all his fault. Obviously, the offensive line wasn't holding up particularly well. There were, play calling issues and things of that nature, but didn't have a great game, right? And was performing pretty poorly, and you keep him in that game and you're going to lose. And I tweeted in the second quarter, I just said, I wouldn't fault this coaching staff at all if they brought in Marcel Reed, because it was trending that poorly for this team that just couldn't get anything going. And they come out of halftime, they got the ball first at halftime. Connor Wigman still starting, and I was kind of shocked just with the way things were going. I know it was 17-7 at the time, but really just the differences between both offenses and the way the game was going, it really felt more like 31-7. And LSU had missed a couple field goals at that point. A&M felt very fortunate to only be down 10 points at that time, and so they brought Connor Wigman out, continued to struggle, and then A&M's desperate for a spark, and just seemed like if LSU scores one more touchdown, this game's over. A&M can't, they're not a team that's built to come back from a 17-point deficit. They're a team that likes to run the ball. They're a team that likes to get after the quarterback. But you ask them to air it out, they just can't do that. And what happens? BJ Mays intercepts Garrett Nussmeier, brings it back, first and goal at the 8-yard line. And you're thinking, okay, well, A&M only down 10. They could cut it to a score regardless, even with a field goal. They bring in Marcel Reed, comes in off the sideline, comes into the game, first play of the game, an 8-yard touchdown run. And the crowd's chanting, Marcel Reed, Marcel Reed. They're loving it. And you're thinking, okay, well, it's just one play from the 8-yard line. Can he keep this up? At that point, it's 17-14. And what does he do? They score on their next 4 or 5 drives, a field goal or touchdown, end up with 38 points. He has 3 rushing touchdowns, and LSU really had no answer for him. I'm sure LSU did not expect Marcel Reed to come into that game with how Connor Wigman had played against Missouri and kind of seemed to be cemented as that starter. Even though Marcel Reed went 3-0, A&M went back to Connor Wigman, and so they looked unprepared for defending Marcel Reed, and just brought them that spark that they needed. It's going to be fascinating to see how A&M handles this, because if you watch Mike Elko's post-game press conference, he didn't make any definitive statements. Oh, Marcel Reed's our starter now. Oh, Connor Wigman's our starter now. Didn't say anything like that. But what he did say was kind of defend Connor, said, hey, he made bad throws, but he wasn't put in a good position. That, there were other things that were wrong about the offense. He wasn't put in the best position by the coaching staff. The matchups and what the defense was doing did not put things in his favor. And with Marcel Reed, the situation called for not just a spark, but they felt like there was kind of that weakness in the defense that they could exploit with Marcel Reed's rushing ability. So it seemed to kind of open the door for like, hey, this isn't over. This isn't, okay, Marcel Reed just did this, so now he's the starter forever now. This could still be a week-to-week thing, and you're going into South Carolina next Saturday, another huge game for this A&M team. Is Marcel Reed 100% the starter? I don't know if you can quite say that, but I know what fans are going to feel. This is, after that Notre Dame game, it was kind of like the mulligan for Connor Wigman, where, okay, you're going to kind of have to earn the trust back, and if you do anything like this again, see you later. And what does he do? Comes against Missouri, shreds it. Maybe the best game that he had in his career. Didn't play well at Mississippi State, leaving people kind of questioning, okay, is this just going to be up and down? But now that he's done it again, this fan base clearly has a favorite now. Marcel Reed's the favorite child. If they had two children, Reed's the one that they like the most. And so, is he your best option? Hey, we know what he can do as a spark off the bench, as somebody who maybe isn't prepared for opposing team's not prepared for. But what about as a starter? When a team does have, plans against him. We saw him kind of regress over a 3-week period, lit it up against Florida, and then just didn't really quite make the necessary steps. So maybe it kind of becomes who's the hot hand, because there are times where Connor Wigman looks like, hey, okay, yeah, this is why NFL draft people are talking about him being a high draft pick. Then there are times where it's like, man, this guy is not a very good quarterback. That up and down nature you get with Wigman, maybe it kind of becomes like, a bullpen where, hey, this is the guy who's hot right now. Because if Reed comes in and he struggles, maybe you have to go back to Wigman. I know people don't like that, and I understand it, and I don't like it either. But that's kind of the situation A&M sits in when you're thinking about where this could go over the next couple weeks. Because it's easy to say, oh, you got to go with Reed. But what happens if he struggles? And what happens if Connor replaces him and almost does the same thing? You don't know that for sure. And so I just caution people to make anything definitive right now. People are probably going to be mad at me for not jumping on the Reed train immediately. And, this whole year I've been a Wigman over Reed guy, even when Reed was a 3-0 starter. This was the first game where I was like, hey, you got to make the change. Tweeting before halftime. I really think you got to do it. Elko, it took a lot of stones to make that move. I mean, now people are going to be asking about it. People are going to be wondering about it. And certainly the team will have their opinions about it. And it was the right move. People kind of wondered against Notre Dame, hey, do they win that game if you replace Connor Wigman with Marcel Reed? I don't know the answer to that question. It's easy to say, yeah, because you couldn't have gotten much worse than what Connor Wigman gave you that game. But was Marcel Reed the guy that we saw today at that point? Somebody that really hadn't played that much football in college up to that point? I don't know, because, again, I think those 3 games that he started are a huge reason why you saw today what you saw today. And so I just think that's going to be the biggest storyline going forward. But obviously a lot of other things to cover from this game. BJ Mays has to get a huge shout out, because I just want to remind people, this guy played the nickel position. He's played it for like a month. He was an outside cornerback who came to A&M this offseason from UAB. I think he got a concussion in preseason camp and didn't win a starting job, and was kind of buried on the bench for the first couple weeks. Then Tyreek Chappelle comes down with a season-ending injury in practice right before the Florida game. They bring in Jaden Hill initially, somebody that they had more familiarity with. He'd played for the defensive coordinator at A&M, Jay Bateman at Florida. Really did not play well. Left a lot to be desired with his play. They moved, after Chappelle went down with his injury, they moved B.J. Mays to nickel. And he kind of was the backup to Hill. Then when Hill was struggling, they started to give Mays some opportunities, and he really ran with them. Really, for the first time last week, he outsnapped Hill in a game at Mississippi State. And then this was the game. He made his first start at nickel, and 2 interceptions. I mean, a huge game. Honestly, we'll talk about Marcel Reed mostly for this game, but B.J. Mays was just as critical in as far as this win goes. And it just speaks to kind of the culture of this program, to have a guy, not really go his way the first couple weeks and not playing at all. And they're saying, hey, move to another position to be a backup. Agrees to do it, and look what's happened for him. A huge shout out is deserved for B.J. Mays. A&M had a lot of tackling problems in this game in the first half. LSU really exploited them in space, and you saw the 76-yard touchdown from Aaron Anderson. Looked like a missed tackle from Dalton Brooks. Brooks had a couple missed tackles in this game today. 17 points for LSU in the first quarter and a half. And you're kind of looking and you're thinking that this LSU team might put up 40 points. And to not score, really for the last 2.5 quarters speaks to this defense's ability to adjust. We've seen some really ugly moments from this defense. We've seen them give up big plays. I keep thinking back to the Arkansas game where third play of the game, 75-yard touchdown pass, broken coverage, not a broken coverage, but just Jaden Hill just getting beat deep on that play. Well, A&M goes and responds and really keeps Arkansas in check for the last 3 quarters. Kind of what they did today as far as what they did in the last, in that second half where, LSU moved the ball. They had one really nice drive in the third quarter where they scored a touchdown. Nussmeier was really sharp on that drive, but really the missed tackles and all that stuff, really weren't as big of an issue in that second half. A&M gave up over 400 passing yards tonight, but they only gave up 24 rushing yards, I think, on 27 carries. So overall, not great, but you shut down one side and you kind of, make up for some things by getting 3 turnovers, plus what you did on special teams. I don't know if you can really credit A&M for that. 2 missed field goals, a botched snap that hit the holder in the face mask. A&M, I guess they deserve credit for capitalizing on those mistakes and staying in that game. But just overall, I think when you think back at this game, you think of Marcel Reed, you think of B.J. Mays, but you also think of just how it flipped. Again, 17-7, they looked dead, and to think that they won 38-23 after what they looked like for the first 2.5 quarters is pretty crazy. And then just talking big picture now, 5-0 in SEC play. A&M hasn't started 5-0 in conference play since 1998, which, if you remember, is the last time they won a conference title over Kansas State. And this was kind of the game where you looked at and said, if A&M wins this game, oh my gosh, they now have 3 SEC games left. You might only need to win 2 of them to be going to Atlanta. You may have to only go 10-2 to get in the college football playoff. South Carolina is a tricky game next week. They've got a really dang good defense, really dang good defensive line, and it'll certainly be a challenge for whoever starts at quarterback to navigate not just against that defense, but in that road environment. We saw what happened 2 years ago with this team, not really being able to handle that environment. Obviously a different team now, but this South Carolina team's no joke. They had LSU on the ropes. They had Alabama on the ropes. They've played some pretty competitive games. And, you know, it has that feel of a trap game as far as coming off a big win. A&M's going to need to channel that focus. And you watch the post-game press conference, they were saying all the right things as far as moving on to the next game. But you win that game, and I mean, Auburn is not a very good football team. New Mexico State obviously is New Mexico State, and you set up a huge showdown against Texas. It could be a battle between two one-loss teams, and it could be a game that decides who goes to Atlanta. Maybe both teams go to Atlanta, depending on how the game shakes out. So you win this game. It's now 7 straight wins for Texas A&M, and I would imagine they'll move into the top 10 in the polls. Now everyone's talking about you. I felt like going into this game, not enough people were talking about A&M. Now everyone's got now they've got everyone's attention. And how do you handle that? How do you handle the, huge win? Can you remain focused? This team has showed time and again this season that they can respond well, no matter what's kind of thrown at them. So I expect them to kind of keep it rolling, but we will see. But anyways, that's it from me here. Appreciate y'all watching. And late night, probably gonna be up pretty late, so been a little bit under the weather, but a fun one tonight. I'll be at South Carolina next week, and we'll see you guys then.